Yeah, so YAML is simple. So anything which comes below it with the space is the child element. So it's very simple to write. You don't have commas, you don't have open braces, close braces, you don't have like what you have in XML where you open it with tags and close it with tags. Nothing like that. So it is very simple, and Ansible works primarily on YAML. So most of the things or the playbook is defined using YAML playbook. So what YAML is? Yet another markup language. So that is the full form of YAML. So this is what YAML is. So what it is whatever playbooks or whatever configuration or automation scripts we write in Ansible, we call it as playbook. So all the playbooks are written in a language called YAML. So it is required for you people to understand what YAML is or understand the structure of what YAML is before going into writing a playbook and other things, because YAML is strictly if there is any extra space or something, then the playbook will fail. So indentation is very important in YAML, so we need to understand what indentation is. And YAML files can be stored either with YAML format or with YML format. So it's up to us, because both of these things refer to YAML, and Ansible can understand both of these formats. And then there shouldn't be tabs for space. For example, if you write a program and when you are writing a complex playbook, avoid using tab. So tab is nothing but the 3 space one. So instead use the spacebar, because at times Ansible considers tab as a value, and then your playbook will fail. So the best practice to write a YAML file is by using the spacebar. So so hope we all know about what XML is, right? So what XML is nothing but it's a basic thing where you have the format, tags, open tags and close tags. The JSON, you have open braces. When you come to YAML, it is company space project, and whatever the company's child element is project, the project child element is ID and other things. So maybe I can show you what YAML is when I show what playbook is all about. So maybe let's have a demo on what YAML is.
Venkat, on the example that you are showing, like how does it recognize that this is the end of the code?
So whatever the last line would be the end of the code. So if the page contains around 155 lines, then 150th line would be the end of the file. So it is not it will not be processing the file line by line. It first understands the file and then it processes it. Maybe I have some examples.
Your screen is not shared anymore.
Oh, is it?
Yes.
Yeah, it's shared right now, right? Yeah. So this is the best example. So I just wanted to show a few of the things in online. So here we can see that the YAML, no, this is the proper JSON, whatever we write. I'm marking it right, yes. So what it has, so it's JSON, it's a list. So it starts with the brace, the square bracket, and then waterfall. So JSON and YAML works on key value pair. So hope we understand what key value pair is. So key is for which we are setting the value. So waterfall is the key here, and angel false is the value here. The same way, height is the key here, and the value for the height is the value. So JSON and YAML both works on key value pairs. So what we can see here. So let me format it a little.
What editor is that, by the way? The
This
one
is the
that you're.
Notepad plus and the Notepad plus plus.
Okay.
So this is nothing but the sample JSON. So maybe we can eliminate this braces. So this is how a JSON looks like. So this is the key and this is the value. So anything that comes next to in the same parenthesis will have comma except the last value. For example, if I'm going to add here, then I should have a comma in the end, unless or until my value is the last one. For example, here we don't have comma in the height, correct? So this is how the JSON actually reads the value. So any element which doesn't end with comma is the last element of that particular array. So the same way, when we are going to write it as a YAML, so how it is going to be, it's like, so this is how it is going to be. It's a single JSON file. The same way we are writing it here. The first would be the waterfall. Then here with the space, which is unequal with the waterfall, we'll be writing country. So this is how we'll be doing it. So this is the simple example of JSON and YAML. Whatever you see in braces, you don't see it here. You don't see the commas. You don't see the tags, nothing. So why I'm using tag here is it is neither an integer nor an string. So that's the reason I'm parsing the complete value as a string. So anything in a programming language quoted between these two strings or the colons is considered to be a string. So that's the reason I'm just passing it as a string here. So this is how simple it is. For example, let me have a JSON where I'm telling class in class I'll be having and then I'll be having. So what I'm missing here, so and I'm closing this and then closing this as well. So what I'm missing here, I'm missing a comma here. So if I'm going to write it without a comma, then it's not going to be a valid JSON. So I'm just adding a command here. I'm not comma here. I'm not adding the comma here because that is the last element. So how I'm going to write in YAML the same thing? It's going to be simple. It is going to be class is the parent of this subtree, correct? So the first thing would be CLASS. And then how can I differentiate that people and theme are the child element of a parent element called class? So what I'll be doing is be going here. I'll be giving two spaces from here from C. Okay, so it is 1 and 2. Here I'm going to write it as people. So this is how simple I can write it in YAML. So when the code becomes big or when you write a huge playbooks, then you need to be pretty sure on your syntax. So if I'm going to write this as the same space, then team becomes the child element of people, which is not the same as what it is here. So we need to be very clear on how many spaces we are leaving and which is the parent element and which is the child element. So we need to be very clear on that before writing YAML. So this is the simple example of YAML. So I have taken few links. Maybe I can show you that. You can go here. So so this is the place where you can learn the complete, like what arrays and other things you can have hands on. You can test it like how Jenkins is. Maybe I'll post it right away in the chat. So I have posted the link. So this is a place where you have the all the scenarios on how different formats are there in Ansible and how to write an Ansible and other things. So sorry, YAML and other things. So when you want to create an Ansible playbook, you obviously need to know what YAML is. So this is a very basic thing. So who created Ansible and from where Ansible came? So Ansible, as I said, belongs to Red Hat. So we are almost seeing all the products that are with Red Hat as an open source product. The same way, even Red Hat is an open source one, which is funded by, sorry, Ansible is an open source one, which is funded by Red Hat. And then you have almost all the modules free of cost. So once you want to have an enterprise support and other things, then you will be going to Red Hat. Till then, you are free to use Ansible. So Ansible is completely customizable. So you can use your write your own plugin. So it is written in Python. So if you feel that the plugins which are available in Ansible are not as powerful as we expected, then we are good to write our own module where, if there is any specific process a company sticks to, then yes, we can go and we can write a module based on whatever the process the company is following. Ansible will understand that. And then yes, so Ansible is one of the biggest open source product that is hosted in GitHub. So we have a lot of contributors. So when I talk about an open source product, so most of the contributors are the open source developers or the open source evangelists, correct? So in this Ansible or in this scenario, even the companies, so whenever a Cisco releases a switch, they also release an Ansible module in parallel, so that they can automate the complete configuration of switch using Ansible. So people, when we go to VMware and other things, yes, even for those things we have modules written by VMware. So these are not written by some Ansible team or something. So VMware has developed the Ansible modules. So these are some of the Ansible modules we have. So everything at the end of the day is hosted in GitHub. So if you want an example or if you want anything, then you have all the details in the GitHub. So you can do the customization. You can check the details of the cluster. You have, this is the module name, and then this is the complete details on what this particular module can do. So you have the complete list here. The same way you have for AWS, you have for GCP, almost all the cloud platforms, and almost the complete infrastructure lifecycle can be automated using Ansible. So recently we have even come up with VMware upgrade using Ansible. So that was a couple of interesting projects that we have executed. So one is the VMware patching. So when we have the VMware upgrades and other things that even that can be achieved using Ansible. And one drawback of Ansible, so why we have Chef, we have Puppet, we have Ansible. So Ansible is an open source. Yes, that is an advantage. So what disadvantage that does Ansible have? So as I said, Ansible doesn't care about what state the child is. So for example, when you have a chef, so you have a chef manager in place, you have an agent which is running. So whenever you change or modify any file that is managed by chef, the manager automatically pushes the exact configuration, whatever it is there in the master. So Ansible doesn't have any such mechanism. So it's a single time job. Whenever you run the Ansible playbook, whatever changes you want to do it in the file, it goes and it does it. So it doesn't care about what state the file is once the playbook is completely executed. That is one of the disadvantage we have for Ansible. And I have a complex task, or I want to schedule few tasks, and how can I do those tasks? So all the scheduling and all the complete workflow mechanisms can be achieved through something called Ansible Tower, which is known as AWX in open source. That we'll be looking at it in tomorrow's session. So I have taken few slides from the Ansible Tower, and I have few examples. We can just go try to execute the playbook and things from Ansible Tower. So why Ansible? So whenever I go for a complex environment, or whenever I go in a very strict environment, I need to given proper valid reason for each and every process that is running. So that is the reason, as I said on the first class, something called atomic OS is becoming popular, because whatever services we want, only those services will be compiled in the kernel, and it's a very lightweight VM. The same way, whenever a puppet or whenever chef agent is running, so most of the complaints team tells that there shouldn't be any agent or an external third party agent that should be running, which manages the configuration. Because if there is any configuration mismatch in the master, then the complaints part, or if you feel these are the complaints thing, my firewall should be closed on these ports. And when chef agent is running, when there is any change done on master, irrespective of any approval or anything, the master automatically pushes the changes to that VM, so it loses the complaints and it can have a security impact. So people slowly moved towards Ansible. So they understood that the state of the file can be taken care with a cron job or with continuous monitoring using different tools. But it is important that their server shouldn't have any external agent that is running. So that's the reason Ansible got the popularity, and it's a very simple one. So you doesn't have any complex structure, you doesn't need to understand any Python code, Ruby code, or JavaScript or something. You just need to know YAML, and you just need to be sure on what modules are. So that's where we stand. And it is very easy, and if there is no any installation required, or there is no any complex like a master VM which runs at like a puppet master which runs a Tomcat UI and things like that. Nothing like that. You just need a master Ansible server which is connecting to all the child nodes using 22 port. It can use either SSH or telnet. So yes, Ansible has so many advantages, but what disadvantage that does Ansible have? As I said, so Ansible needs to have SSH connection. So SSH connection is typically through port 22. So in some organization, there is some compliance norms which tells the port 22 shouldn't be open. So it should be closed one. So in those scenarios, we'll find Ansible difficult for it to get a place in that environment, because Ansible majorly connects using SSH and Telnet, and it even has the concept of jump nodes, like how we do it, right? So whenever we need to connect to any prod infra or something, we connect to jump node, and from jump node we connect to the prod infra. So Ansible has the advantage of doing that as well, but anyways, that needs the SSH port open. So if the Ansible parent VM is compromised, or if there is any scripts that have in place, then it will be easy for the hacker to push it to all the servers below it which has the port 22 open. So that was one of the biggest drawback they had. So when Ansible introduced, or when Ansible was early in the market, they were using key authentication. Laterly they moved to the username and password, which makes them a little stronger on security aspect. Even when port 22 is opened, you need to have the proper credentials for you to run anything, or for you to connect the VM. So that's where we stand today. So SSH can be done using the keys and using the username and password. So it is up to us on what type of job we are running in the child node. Based on that, we can give access to the user. And then what Ansible supports. So Ansible is something which is developed mainly for Linux machines in the start, and then slowly as the demand increases, as the space in the IT field increases, such as cloud, we had VMware, we had network devices, we had Windows servers coming in. So Ansible decided to support all these things, because end of the day, it is the end user. As I said, if Cisco is releasing a switch, he is releasing a module. So there is no any much pain for Ansible to maintain the module. So Ansible decided to extend its wings and support to all the Linux machines, Windows machines, network devices, VMware, cloud. Say whatever it is in infra, it can be controlled using Ansible. So, but there is one drawback. Your Ansible master server should always be a Linux one. You don't have a Windows server where you can keep it as a master server. So the place where you will be executing all your playbooks should be a Linux server, Windows server, or any other, the any other VMs or any other OS is not allowed. It should be any flavor of Linux. Maybe a Fedora, or it can be a CentOS, or it can be Dell, it can be Ubuntu, anything. But it should be a Linux flavor one. But from this master node, you can connect to any of these below servers in Windows, or in network devices, VMware and cloud, and you can get your playbook executed. So what is the requirement of Ansible? As I said, there is something dependencies which always exist when you install a package, right? So there is only one dependency here for Ansible. The dependency is nothing but Python 2.7 or above. So if the version is less than 2.7, then Ansible wouldn't be able to understand or execute some of the modules which it is mapped to. So there is a chart in the Ansible GitHub where you can see which Python version is recommended for which Ansible version. So based on that, on the Ansible version you are installing, you can install the Python versions as well. And why these Ansible versions are important? So if I'm going to develop a module, or if I'm going to develop some advanced thing which I can manage in infrastructure side or in cloud side, so I'll be going with the latest one. So when we want to use something which is related to GCP, so GCP is something which has come up very recently when compared to other cloud vendors. So the GCP modules are available from the beginning of the Ansible, but it is best supported with the latest version of Ansible. So when you want to use its complete features, then it is always better you go with the latest version of Ansible, so that your debugging would be better, your output processing would be better, and Ansible, the latest version of Ansible, would be completely able to understand what GCP is, how the process is, and other things, rather than just depending on the models. So the version of Ansible we use is also equally important, and based on the task whatever we are going to perform. So as I said, how to install an Ansible? So it is very simple. So you just need to, based on the flavor. So we have an Ubuntu here. So that's done. So just giving this command in my Ubuntu, or based on the CentOS or flavor, whatever it is, I'd be installing the Ansible. So there is no any much dependencies or anything which you need to install. So the installation is also very simple. So how Ansible works? So maybe no. So let's keep this. So let's keep this is the Ansible master and this is the Ansible child. So what master does is master doesn't execute anything remotely. So whatever commands that are executed or any playbook, or for example, let's take this is a VMware server. So this is the Ubuntu server. So if I want to check the status of a VM running on this VMware host, then master doesn't execute remote commands. Remote commands is executing a command in the master and trying to get the details from the child. So there is a lot of security aspects that needs to be looked upon. So instead what master does is master checks if there is Python installed in the child node. If Python is installed, then master will tell, yeah, this is a good host and we have master installed on that. And based on that, child will tell the master, hey, I have Python installed. I know you are Ansible. What are you trying to give me? So what master does is master tells the child that I am going to fetch some info on the VMs. I have a module which is written in Python. So the master sends the Python code to the child, and the Ansible executes the Python code which is given to the child from the master node. So whatever command that is getting run in the child node or in the VMware infra, for example, is only run on the VMware infra. So it is not run on master infra and the details are fetched. So it runs on the child node, and child node gives the data to the master. So here we can see there are three concurrent connections that is made. So first one is to check if Python is installed or not. If Python is a proper version and child node is able to understand, this connection is established by Ansible master. The second one is to check if the modules are installed on it or not. If not, then the master will push the Python scripts. So modules are nothing but a Python script. So it will push the Python scripts to the child node. And the third one is it executes whatever the module or the Python script that is being pushed to the child, and then based on that it fetches the output from the child. So technically master doesn't execute any command. It will only read the playbook. Based on whatever is required, it will push the infra or the script to the child node, and the child node is something which is executing. So that is the reason we tell whenever we connect a machine with Ansible, Python should be installed both on child node as well as in the master node, because master node doesn't execute anything. Master nodes only have Python scripts that will push to the child node, and based on child node's Python version, the scripts will be executing. So this is how the Ansible connection works. So as I said, it's three steps to check if module is installed in remote host, and then else push it and execute the command and to get the response of the executed command. So this is fine for me when I'm using a Linux machine, because Linux can understand what Python version is and other things. When it comes to Windows, all these steps are executed using WinRM service. So you need to have the WinRM service running in your server so that you can interact with the Ansible in case you are doing any automation with some Windows server or anything of that sort. Any doubts still here?
No, Venkat.
Yeah, perfect. So next thing I'll be moving to modules. So as I said, what a module is. So the one which I've highlighted here, right? So this is the task which I'm going to do. What I'm going to do, I'm going to install the latest version of Apache. So here I'm using something called YAML. So YAML is a module. So you can get a doubt now that whatever is there available in CentOS or RHEL where you do the YAML install or something. So the YAML which comes by default in the system is different. The YAML which we use in the Ansible playbook is different. So the YAML which we use here is a module, and it is a name of a script which executes the installation procedure in the remote host. So there is a complete difference between the YAML which is by default in the system and the one which we use as a module. So whenever we install Ansible, right, so we have few modules that get installed. So one of that module name is YAML. So since YAML is mostly used for installation, the same way here also we use YAML to install the HTTPD or the Apache server. And for based on the if it is going to be Ubuntu, we have a module called apt-get. The same way for the other.
Can you make it a slide bigger to the presentation?
Yeah, is it fine now?
Okay.
Yeah. So the yum, whatever we are using here, is not the one which comes by the default or the system command. This is just a Python script with the same name, which is installed as part of Ansible. So this is a sample playbook. So I'll just understand how it is. So the complete syntax is written in YAML. So you can see the name. So name is the parent. So what I'm doing here, I am installing the latest version of Apache, and the yum is the child element, or the is the same element of the name. So yeah, name is nothing but the heading we do. So whenever we try to debug something, or whenever we want to check which process has been executed and things like that, then we will be debugging it using the name. So this will be easy for us to understand. So it's just an identifier, and yum is the parent element here. So for yum, what are the the input variables that is required? So what is the package you want to install? So by package name is httpd. So httpd is nothing but the Apache one. And what is the state? So if I need to have some different version or something, I can give that version here. Based on that, my Ansible playbook will go and install it in the remote host, and then this is used to fetch what all packages are installed in the remote host. So here I can see, I have defined a name as an input variable, and I have passed the vars here. So yum is a module I'm using here. So name is the subcomponent or the input parameter we passed with the yum. So what all packages we are checking for? We are checking for httpd and httpd tools. So vars is nothing but the variables we are passing in this input. So if you are going to pass nginx here, then yum module will see the input, and based on the input it will go and fetch all the yum modules, nginx modules that are installed in the server. So these are nothing but an input variable which we give here, and we call that input variable using the heading or the parent name. So that is nothing but packages. So this is how we write a playbook. Maybe we'll start with a simple one so that you'll be able to understand how to start with it. So these are the default path of Ansible. So if you want to do any configuration changes, but you don't want to do that configuration changes in the uh, installer path as such, then you can copy the config file here and you can pass it as an input when you are going to execute the playbook. The same way, there is something called inventory, which I'll be covering in few slides. So if you are not passing an inventory file, then by default it would be checking the inventory file from etc Ansible host. So host would be the default inventory file for Ansible. So any doubts still here? I guess we are fine. So I'm just moving to the next slide. So what inventory is all about? So when I tell Ansible is used to execute the remote commands in a remote host, then there should be some space where we specify what is the remote host IP, or how we need to connect to the remote host, and details of the remote host, right? So even if I'm doing SSH command, or if I'm doing Windows RDP, so what I'll be doing? So I'll be going to the RDP, and then I would be typing the IP address of the host which I'm going to connect. Based on that SSH to the IP address where I'll be connecting. So since Ansible is an automated one, we use something called inventory, where we specify all the details of the host. If there is any specific input, or if there is any specific class, for example, my host is disabled with root login, so I need to pass a user, or if I need to pass in any input variable as part of connecting the host, then all those details I will be giving it in a file called inventory. So what inventory is? The first one is the static inventory. So static inventory is nothing but where we go and manually give each and every name of the remote host we are going to connect. So in this scenario, what we are categorizing the servers into two. One is the web server and the other one is DB server. So why we are categorizing this into two? So take a scenario where you need to push a config file into all your web servers, maybe Tomcat or Apache. So you cannot give each and every name as part of an input, right? So what you do, you randomly,
Record your message and press pound, or press star to contact the operator.
so maybe you can go to mute if you don't have any questions. Yeah, thank you. So what I do is I by default call the group name. So whatever server names or nodes I have given in this group. So if I want to push a config file, then automatically that will be implemented in all the child elements of this group. So I can call the group as web server here. So if I want to get some
Recording.
DB,
1. To verify your recording, press 2. To exit, press pound.
so yeah. So the same way, if I want to get some data from the DB servers, so what I can do is I can call the group DB servers, and whatever command I want to execute on all the DB servers, it gets executed on all these 4 hosts. So this is fine till we have something which is limited. So here we have only 2 web servers, we have only 4 database servers. So take a commercial or enterprise VMware environment where you have 100 plus or 1000 plus ESX host or the nodes running and other things. When it comes to VMs, it is of infinite count, correct? So you cannot add. If tomorrow you are going to release some 5 to 6 VMs, then you cannot open your static inventory, and based on the static inventory you cannot go add all these files and things like that. That becomes very complex. So that's the reason we have something called dynamic inventory. So what dynamic inventory is, it is nothing but an inventory which is passed as a Python script. So whenever the script is executed, that will go to the remote host based on the parameters we given. So for example, if I need to connect to AWS, so if I'm going to define a static inventory of AWS, so I am just decommissioning the bar.example.com from AWS environment, but still it stays in your inventory unless or until you remove it. So when you run the playbook, it try to connect the bar.example.com and the VM, obviously the VM wouldn't exist, right? So your playbook will fail. So to avoid all these things, there is something called dynamic inventory. So dynamic inventory can be filtered using tags. So there is a concept called tags and labels. We can even tag a VM in VMware, or we can tag a VM in Azure. So what it does is, based on the whatever input tags or labels we given, based on that it will filter the VM. And if it is going to be an app server or the web server here, just whenever I'm creating a VM, I need to make sure there is a label that is added as web server, type web server. So whenever I'm using the dynamic inventory, I will just pull those details or the VMs which has tags as web server. So based on that, I will form a dynamic inventory or an inventory on fly, and then I'll be executing all the remote commands on that inventory. So any doubts on this, or any doubts still here? So I'm just moving on to the next slide. So what is in-memory inventory? As I said, dynamic inventory goes and fetches all the details the same way. What the in-memory inventory does is, it will not fetch the complete details. So what is the difference on dynamic inventory and in-memory inventories? I'll be giving this inventory as part of my playbook. So based on the filter, whatever I'll be giving, so the playbook, whenever it is executed, that will go query and fetch only the values or the VMs which are with the particular labels whatever I have given in the playbook, whereas the dynamic inventory fetches all the details at first, then based on whatever input I pass in, it filters the value. So when you have a huge environment, you cannot expect a Python script to go get all your VMs. So if it is going to be 1,000 plus VMs in a ESX cluster, then it will be getting all the 1,000 plus VMs in the ESX cluster, and based on the labels it will be filtering it. So that's a time taking process. And meanwhile, whenever whenever this process is going on, if you're going in the backend and going to power off some VM or something, then obviously dynamic inventory wouldn't know that there is a power off that has been initiated in the vCenter. So to avoid all these errors, there is a concept called in-memory inventory, so which executes in the beginning whenever we run the playbook. So this is also a part of playbook. So what it does, it doesn't get all the complete details. So whenever it is doing the API calls to the cloud servers, it would be fetching values only based on the labels. So it is a time less consuming process, and it's a simple process. So it will not go fetch all your resources and things like that. Whatever you are specifying on tags, only those resources you will be getting. So based on that, your playbook will be executing. So this is the in-memory inventory. So any doubts on what inventory is?
Where to use the username and password? Like, will it use any authentication for this?
Yes. So when you want to give username and password, there are two ways how you can do it. One is you can directly define the key in the Python scripts, whatever you are executing, or else there is a concept called vault. So whenever you are executing this, there will be a prompt where it will be asking you to give the username and password, or the access key and the secret key. You can give it as it is, or else there is a concept called vault, which I'll be covering. So there you can specify, and your credentials would be encrypted, and you can point that vault when you are running the playbook, so that based on your vault value, the playbook will be executed.
Okay, okay.
So moving on, how to run my Ansible command. So there are two ways how you can run an Ansible command. So the first thing is to just directly call the module and then run it. So if you don't have any complex step-by-step process you need to do it and things like that, what you can do is you can just directly call it. So let's have a
Playbook means what actually?
So playbook is actually the script where you define the automation process. So the playbook is the file which you will be calling. So whenever I tell this, it starts in the it begins the playbook, right? So it's a simple file where you define step-by-step process on what needs to be done on a systematic manner, and you call it whenever you'll be running the playbook. So whenever you'll be running the Ansible. So here my playbook is first playbook ext.yaml. So this is my playbook where I'll be defining the step-by-step process on what it needs to be done, what to install, and all those things. So playbook is nothing but the script which is called by Ansible.
Okay.
So how the ad hoc command works is simple. So here I don't have any mod like any inventory file which is created or anything. So it tells me that provided host is empty, only local host is available. So what I'll do is I'll first try to create an inventory, and the format of inventory file is .ini. So here in US test server, since I don't have multiple VMs now, I'm just giving local host here. So what I can do is I can call here -i test.
What will do in this program actually, this command?
So it will just check if the local host or the whatever group I have given, whether it is pinging or not. So the module which I use here is ping. So I have the output here. So the local host is able to ping properly. So the same way, so I'll give something called a different group here. So some random IP, let me give it. So 10.0.10.100. So anyways, it's a random IP and it will not connect from this server. So here I'll run the same command. So for localhost, it is success and it is trying to reach the next group or the false group or the IP which I have provided. So you can see here it is unreachable, correct? So in this file, I have given two groups. One is the test server and the other is false server. So why it is going and checking both the groups? The reason is I have given here the value as all. So if I'm going to change it to false server, you can see the difference here, right? So the first thing is when I give all here, it is running on both my groups. So the first group I specified as localhost and the second group I specified as the false server, correct? So in the second command, whichever I executed, I specify the group here. So I specify the group as false server with an IP. So it didn't go and check the test server. It directly went and checked only this false server, and based on that, I got the input. So this is nothing but a static inventory file I have created. It is nothing but the group. I have added a group test server with the child nodes as localhost as false server with the random IP. So the same way, if I want to add, so let me do this. So here I'm going to add, I'm not going to add as localhost, rather I'll give the loop back or the local IP. And again run the same command. So you can see, right? So it has run on the first IP whatever I have given, and it has run on the second IP whatever I have given. So this is nothing but the concept of group and its child element. So hope it's clear now, right? So any questions on this? Fine, then I'm just moving on to the next slide.
1 second, Milind. How to run multiple commands?
Sorry?
How to run the multiple commands other than ping and all?
So,
We have to keep it in a file like this.
correct. So for that, we would be running the playbook. So I'll just come to the playbook part. So this is just an ad hoc command. So ad hoc command is just executing a simple module here, and based on that you will be running it. So when you want a list of commands to be run, then you will be defining, writing your own playbook, and based on that you will be running it. So I'll be doing it at the end so that you'll have some clarity on that. Okay. So this is the Ansible folder structure. So as I said, the INI would be the inventory file, and we have something called groupwares and hostware. So whenever you create an Ansible folder, right? So whenever you want to specify some particular thing, then you need to follow this folder structure. The reason why you need to follow this folder structure is whatever path, for example, if it is going to be groupwares slash and whatever it is, are predefined in Ansible code. So as someone said, when you want to pass any parameters or username or password for any particular host or for your AWS thing, then you can specify it in the group one or your inventory host name .yaml. So whenever your inventory file or whenever Ansible is running some particular command through that inventory file, then it will come and check if there is any input specific values given to connect to that host or to do any custom configurations on that host. Because in Linux, it's up to me. I can run my SSH on port 22 or I can run it on port 25 or any free port. But Ansible by default can only go and check 22. It cannot understand what exactly the port SSH service is running on. So what I can do is I can go to this group where I can just give a file or the inventory name. For example, if it is going to be localhost.yaml, inside that I can pass a parameter called SSH port or whatever parameter I have configured to connect to SSH. So all those things are the variables for a particular group specific. I can place it in the group pairs. That would be the your inventory host name .yaml. And I have something called hostwares as well. So what is the difference between groupwares and hostwares? So when you have a particular host, for example, you have two hosts here, right? So let's go to the same. So you have two groups here. So the first group is the test server, the second group is false server. So in this group you have two nodes specified. One is the local host or the internal server 127.0.0.1 or 10.0.0.10.100. So whenever I want to pass any input specific to this complete group, so which includes these both child servers as well, so I'll be placing that I'll be placing that in groupwares file with the name of whatever group it is. So I'll be placing it as false server.yaml in the groupwares file, and whatever input I need to pass it to the group below, I'll be passing it here. The same way for hostwares. So if I need to pass anything in specific to this host, then I can write a file called 127.0.0.1.yaml. So generally your file name doesn't take 0. For that, what you can do is you can put a host entry for this. You can take it as localhost. So whenever you ping localhost as well, it resolves the same IP. So localhost is nothing but the DNS name for this IP. So what you need to do, you need to map a DNS name for that particular IP, and then in that name you need to create a file .ini file in the hostwares folder. So hope you understand the difference between groupwares and hostwares, right? So groupwares is specific to a particular group, whatever we call it in the playbook. Hostwares is specific to that host which is part of that group. So if you don't want some conflict to be applied on all the servers in the group and it is specific to a single server, then yes, you can put it in hostwares. The same way you have a server where take a scenario here, you have some 10 servers here. So you have some 10 servers here, and except these two, the rest 8 servers need to have that input variable passed. Then yes, you cannot pass a group variable. You need to have 8 different host input variables. Hostwares specified here. So this is the difference between the groupwares and hostwares. And what libraries. So if you have any custom modules built, or if you have any, for example, whenever you need to run a Python code or Python script, right, you need to have few packages installed. So the same way, whenever you're writing your own module, which is end of the day is a Python script, so for you to have a hands-on on that, or any input packages required for you to run that script, then you can place it in library, because library can be a custom library. If you are having some internal application and you need to connect to that application, then obviously your library wouldn't be in a private Python repository server or somewhere. You will have your internal library specified by the developers. So that library or the dependent file for you to run a module, that would be placed in a folder called library. So whenever there is any custom module called in your playbook, the custom module will check for the module available or the script available in this folder, module utils, and when the module file or the Python file is executed, it will check for the dependencies in the library. So hope we are clear till here. The reason why we are going to, we are just going on the folder structure is there is a concept called roles. So roles and other advanced concepts I will be covering, some in some time, based on whatever the inputs we have and whatever questions we have, and we can try to execute a playbook and other things. So for you need to understand this folder structure for you to work on Ansible completely, or develop a fully functional Ansible playbook with a complete life cycle. For you to do that, you need to know the folder structures as well. So what filter plugin is, whenever you have any output to be parsed, for example, whenever you do an post or any REST command, right, the output whatever you get would be a JSON file or an XML file or any other format, whatever it is. So you need to parse that filter based on whatever exact value you require, right? For that parsing, there is something called Jinja 2. So Jinja 2 is nothing but a template format that is used. So this is how Jinja 2 looks like. So I don't want to focus much on Jinja 2 and other things. The reason is it's only the beginning. So whenever we go deep into Jinja 2 and other things, then we need a whole a complete session for a couple of weeks only on concentrating on how to parse the output and how to add beauty to the playbook, or write a fully functional playbook. Since we are in the basics, so we'll start with the basics thing. So you just need to understand what it is. This is the place where you put all your filter plugins, which is required for you to pass the output. And then these are the playbooks. So one is the site.yaml, and the other one is webserver.yaml, and the other one is dbservers.yaml. So this is the Ansible structure we'll be having whenever, if you need to run any playbook or anything. So you need to have that inventory file in that particular folder. You need to have group wars and local wars specified, if any, and you'll be placing all your modules, library and other things here. So this would be your playbook. When you execute this playbook, Ansible will check for all the input parameters from the folder whatever we have given, except the inventory file, because inventory file is something what we will be specifying. We can place it at any path, and we can specify the full path of that inventory file, since it's an input given by the user, unless like the group pairs and the other things which are by default coded in the Ansible for working playbooks or the working code structure. So as I said, these are the default path. So if I'm not going to pass any inventory file, then by default it would go and check etc Ansible host. Let's try this for now. So what I do is copy this test ini to etc Ansible host. You can see the file is copied here, right? So what I'll be doing, I'll run an ad hoc command where I'll not be specifying the inventory file. You can see by default it is going and fetching the data from etc Ansible host. So if I didn't have this whole host file in the beginning, so when I was trying to run this, I was getting an error stating, provide host list is empty, only local host is available, because I haven't provided any host file here. So by default it was checking the etc Ansible host. Now I have some data which I have given in the etc Ansible host. So when I'm trying to run it without any inventory, by default it is going and check for the groups in etc Ansible host and it is executing it. So if you're not going to specify any inventory, it will not check or it will not read the inventory whatever you have it in this folder structure. So by default, it will go and get the inventory from etc Ansible host. So this is the basic working on Ansible. So team, you have any doubts on this till here? Because next I will be defining a playbook and we will be running playbook based on that. So I guess we are fine. So Kumar, you want to add anything here to whatever topics we have just completed?
Yeah, so maybe uh, well, maybe they're not asking question, right? So instead of that, what we can ask them, if they are doing some manual jobs in their Linux environment, or maybe their VM environment, right? Or if they have any other use cases in their current infrastructure, maybe we can tell them some ways how do we can automate using Ansible. Maybe today they are doing the manual patch of the Linux servers, right? Or maybe they are like pushing that maybe the vulnerabilities, right? Maybe Apache or Tomcat vulnerabilities manually, right? The quarter time, right? So if if people are like open about their current issues, or maybe the which the painful things, right? Maybe the routine jobs, manual stuff, maybe we can give them the way how do we automate using the Ansible. Using that maybe using the very friendly playbook, or we can tell them what are the maybe like what we can show. Maybe you can like go through them couple of very frequently used modules, right? The M modules we show them, right? Like that we have so many modules, right? So maybe they can then think of that, and they can come back with the questions maybe tomorrow or sometime whenever they want. Because now like so we do it in the local host, or maybe the like our like isolated environment, right? But in the enterprise world, so they need more idea, right? So maybe now we are talking about very low level, right? So when we are building something for the corporate or maybe the enterprise, like when they have the 1,000 plus servers, so maybe how we can like put it set up there, right? Maybe how many like masters we can deploy it, and how we can connect those with that the clients and nodes. And then like we can then we can tell them what are the frequent issues we will get through Ansible. Because we'll get agent issues, right? Like Chef, we get agent issues, but Ansible, whenever servers like not healthy, we don't connect them, we cannot connect with them, right? So like that, some like maybe that known issues we can tell them. So based on that, they can come with the issues. Some people maybe facing the issue with the cron jobs, or maybe they have some like a ways to do the performance monitoring, or maybe there's some other logs, right? So we can ask them the use case, or maybe their painful thing whichever they're facing currently. Maybe we can give them the idea how we can automate, or maybe use the Ansible models to make use of that. Correct?
Sure, Kumar. We will do that actually. So
Yeah, because like,
team, just for my
yeah, but yeah,
and
wait, like, one more thing, right? Maybe we can like give them comparison for Chef and Ansible, because the market currently with Chef, because earlier days people who were adopted the DevOps, they all went with the Chef. After that, Ansible picked up the market with the REDHAT. Now people are moving to REDHAT. Sorry, this is Ansible. And again, why we are particularly with the Ansible when it comes to Kubernetes and OpenShift. So that relationship also we need to give them, so that they will get better idea. So when they were like in the isolated or lease environment, we were like more towards Chef. But after we are into container and the Kubernetes OpenShift, then we are like coming towards this Ansible, right? So, and how this YAML is playing in between both the Chef and Ansible. Because like when we go deep into Chef, so it is like kind of a developer like developer friendly. Okay, so people who have the developing background or having the programming language background, they can easily adapt the Chef. But wherein people have that like a shell or bash, or maybe like having some ideas where they can automate the stuff, which means the infrastructure background, they can easily adapt the Ansible background, right? These kind of things we can tell them, so that they can think of it. maybe we have so many managers in that session, right? So they can like take this with their clients or maybe with the team, and they can get the ideas. So that way, we can brainstorm the things. Yes, go ahead. Yeah, rest all okay.
Sure, Kumar. So,
Yeah.
is there anyone who has previously worked on Ansible, or you feel any Ansible particular task you need to, the redundant installation or anything of that sort, you do it, or any such use cases we have in this group?
Or anybody like so like I just want we just want to understand, so how like you have your current infrastructure, right? So because maybe it's a like like compliance thing, right? You no need to mention about your client and customer or infrastructure, but when you like if you open about your tools perspective, maybe whether if you are using Chef or Puppet or maybe Vagrant, or maybe if you using something like Ansible, then you can please mention that as well, and you can like say like what issues you are facing with them or what benefits you see compared to this Ansible, so that we can like put more into Ansible and we can compare that, right? So where we are good at that and where we are good with the Ansible. So because without you say anything, like we cannot like go much into that use cases or maybe that automation part, right? So because we were working in Chef before, then we moved into Ansible recently. Because like because the YAML thing, very interesting one. So that is a way like we moved from Chef to Ansible, and again like Chef we had so many failures when it comes to like bulk level of bulk task of patching or maybe the package deployment or maybe integration of that other cloud APIs, right? But Ansible was little comfortable with these things. Okay, so that way we adapt to Ansible. While in some customers we have both the Ansible and Chef in place, and so they using both the environment based on their customer expectation, right? The business thing. So maybe if you open something, then we can talk more about that perspective, and then we can go deep into that things, right? So anybody have went through this one? So because maybe some of you may be involved in the RFP or maybe with the sales pre-sales of part, right? So maybe they come with the how many, so they have some 5,000 nodes and they have this many nodes in Linux and Windows. Because the good thing is, right, when we were using Chef, we were not that much into the VM or automation part, okay? But after with the Ansible, so people are using the Ansible Tower. That's another like a product from the same family of REDHAT. So that also like automate many things in the VMware part. Okay, so many VMware shops, right? VMware cluster customers and clients, they adapting the Ansible very aggressively now. So if you have some kind of thing so about these things, then we can discuss about it anyway. So Venkat, you can like give them some about the playbooks and the modules. Maybe then they can open up their mind and come with the questions. Yes.
Sure, Kumar. So, I'll start with the sample one.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
So we'll first understand what playbook is here. So for me to do this, so I have an inventory file now in place. So I have an inventory file in the default path. So I have two groups here. One is the test server and the other is false server. So anyways, if I'm going to run my playbook in false server, then obviously it would be failing. So I need to run that playbook in test server because local host is connecting and local host is the only thing for me. So what task I would be doing here? So the task I would be doing is to install Nginx. So it tells there is no any installation done, something like Nginx. So the Nginx service itself is not found. So what I can do is I can write a playbook here called install dot YAML. As I said, my first line of the YAML code would start with 3 lines. So which means this file is a YAML file, and I would be so what I am doing here. So the first one is, as we saw in the previous example, I am creating a task here. So before that, I'm going and checking the host. So host is something on which group you exactly want to run the test. So let's go and check our host. So I want to run in a group test server. So in my playbook, I'd be running this on a host called test server. So whatever I have given in that ad hoc playbook, the same way I am going to give it here. I'm giving the name. So I'm doing 2 tasks here. So in the previous one, I was just installing the module. So I was just pinging. So it's only a single one. So I was able to directly run an ad hoc command where I gave an input called -m, and I was able to execute it. Whereas here I am running 2 steps. One is the installing Nginx. The other one is checking if Nginx is started. So it's something like checking if Nginx is installed. If it is not installed, then it wouldn't start. Obviously, it would fail. So I specify here in a tab called task. So task is the parent child here. So inside task, I'll be performing 2 operations. First one would be installing an Nginx, and the second one would be checking if the service is started or not. So what are the modules I'm using here? I'm using a module called APT. So why I'm using a module called APT? Because the one I am installing or I am checking is an Ubuntu one, the OS wherever I'm working. So that is the reason I'm using APT. So if it is going to be a CentOS or Red Hat, then it would be YAML. So that is the default packaging manager used on the Linux flavor. So based on that, I will be selecting my Ansible module. And the second module I am using is the service. So service is the module I'm using to check what are the input parameters sent as part of the service module is the name. So what is the package I need to check whether it's working or not, and what is the status of this package would be, or this service would be. So it would be started, and the name of the service which I'll be checking is Nginx. So here I have used 2 modules. One is the APT and the other one is service. Like that, you have around 400 plus modules for different operations across our the complete platform. So 400 is a small number, it is just growing. You have modules for almost all the you can even do the uh, complete rack and stack configuration using this Ansible playbook. HP has module for it, Dell has module for it, whatever the vendor is, they have a module for it. When you go for Neutronix or hyper converged setup, even for that you have modules where you can use and configure your environment. So that is easy, right? And you have an identical environment, you don't need someone who needs to go do it manually and things like that. You can just have a playbook in common. You can pass the IP configuration and other things as an input, and based on that you can be configure it seamlessly, right? You just need to have the console access for that, drop the playbook in that place and just execute it. Your complete configuration is done. You don't need to even copy the playbook in the child node. You just need to add that infra wherever you're exactly configuring it. You will be adding it in the inventory file, and we'll be just running it on that particular host or that particular inventory. So let's run this playbook. So how to run a playbook? So this was the one which I ran it, right? So it was just an ad hoc command, correct? So what I just gave Ansible -all or the module name, whatever or the group variable name, whatever I need to run on, and -m is the module name. The same way I'll be giving Ansible -playbook. So whenever in Linux, right, the thumb rule is whenever you don't know any command, or whenever you don't know how to execute something, or you don't know what is the command of a process, just type the basic one. So it will give you the complete whatever you can, whatever you can use, you get that complete commands here, or else there is something called man. Man is the input Linux package that is installed. So whatever values you have, or whatever, you know, the different connection checks and whatever input variables you want to pass and other things, you can check it. So if you are, you know, having any issues in running, or if your command is wrong or something, then just type man, and then you can just give that package name. It will list out all the possible commands with which you can run. So these are the possible commands you can run it. So you have all the, you know, complete thing. So this file is supplied as part of the package. So whenever you have some package installed, then you can just do man, and then for example man, and then IP, or man if config. So for it, if config, you know what if config command is to configure a network interface, or get the details of the network interface. You have the description here, and you have the options here. So -a, -s, -v. You know, if you want to, you know, bring any interface up, or if you want to, you know, bring any interface down, you have all the details in it. And to quit it, you need to just press Q. So once you press Q, it comes out of it. So the same way, let's come back to the Ansible playbook. So here it is. So ls is used to list what is there in this particular path, and for you to know which path you are in, it is pwd. So I'm in /root, and I have a playbook called install.yaml. So Ansible. So my playbook execution has begun. So why I'm not giving any inventory file here, or any host name or group name here? The reason is I have specified the group name in install.yaml, and by default I am referring to the inventory file as etc ansible host. So you can see the task is okay and the status is okay, correct? So let me check whether if nginx is installed or not. Boom, it's running. So nginx is installed. And how was I able to install it? Using a simple playbook. So let me show you different scenarios how I can install it. So I'm just doing something to remove the playbook. Okay.
Venkat, one question here.
Yes.
This YAML file, we have to do it on Ansible master server, right? This playbook. Then it will
Yes.
deploy to all the child nodes, right?
Correct. So whatever group we are
Okay.
giving here, based on that it runs in
Okay.
the group.
So if I want to schedule something and it should be triggered automatically, is it possible?
Yes, it is possible when you use something called Ansible Tower. So there is a separate concept called Ansible Tower, where you have a UI and you can configure the scheduling and other stuff. So based on your scheduling, you can execute those commands based on the time, or it's something like a cron job. Yes, you can do it, but not with the plain Ansible thing. You need to have the Ansible Tower. So Ansible Tower is a Red Hat product, and you need to have a license to run that.
So you mean to say two products, Ansible and Ansible Tower?
Correct. Ansible, even Ansible Tower will be using the underlying Ansible. So Ansible is nothing but just a module or a command line interface where you invoke the playbook and you make sure the playbooks are executed in the remote host. For you to have advanced features like scheduling, or you want to define a flowchart where, you know, if your playbook is going to fail, you need to revert it back. And when you need to have these playbook placed in the GitHub, you need to integrate the GitHub code so that every time you don't log into a server and you do all the changes in the playbook and things like that, you need to use something called Ansible Tower. So how the hierarchy would be like Ansible Tower, Ansible, and then your child nodes. So if you don't want the advanced features of Ansible, you are well and good to install the Ansible, write a playbook, and directly shoot it from there. And one more trick is, whenever you want to execute any playbook, right, you can add as a cron in the master server. So based on that, even on that basis, it goes and runs on the regular basis. If you don't want to spend much as part of organization aspect, or your playbook doesn't need a much of rollback and other things, you can place it in the cron job of the Linux server.
Okay, then it is fine. Because I
Yeah,
have
so
a scenario when some of the McAfee version is very low, I can use this and I can update it, right? It can check the version for the
yes,
client, and if needed, the client version is low, then it can update all the posts.
exactly. So you can do that. So what you can do, you can go for a something concept called dynamic inventory. So first you can check all your host, fetch all the McAfee versions, and based on that you can create your own host inventory on the particular host where you want to update the McAfee versions on. So that on the update command only runs on that particular host where your versions are low. So you can do that. So and you can place
Thank
it
you.
as a cron job as well. So on regular basis, maybe monthly once, or based on your requirement, the playbook will be triggered. And one thing you need to remember is you need to capture that output whenever you are placing it in cron job. So capturing, in the sense, you can either use T or whatever output it is coming, right? You need to write it in a file so that you will have log on what exactly the playbook has executed and what exactly has happened. So for that you need to capture the playbook whenever it is running. For that you can use either T or the greater than symbol. It works with that. So it's a basic Linux one.
Okay, Venkat. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. So in this scenario, so what I am doing is, first I am stopping this service nginx. So I'm stopping this service nginx and I'm checking whether the state is stopped or not. And then I am going and removing the nginx package. So what is the difference here? So I'm anyways using apt, anyways I'm using the service, the same module here. So what is the difference? Where do I exactly find difference? The difference is state. When state is present, it installs. When state is absent, it uninstalls. So here I am giving a state absent, which means I'm going to remove this package nginx. So let's check how it works. So this was the same server where we installed Ansible, right? The same way. Now I am removing the Ansible.
Venkat, one more question. If we run the playbook, if you have 10 hosts, simultaneously run on 10 hosts or the one by one?
So for that there is a identically what it does is it runs parallelly on all the hosts. Okay. So the number of hosts it runs parallelly is mentioned in this file etc ansible.config. There is something called so you have something, a value called fork here, right? So what this fork means is how many number of parallel nodes you can run simultaneously on. For example, if I'm going to give, by default the fork could be 1, which means I'll be running only one host at a time. If I have 10 hosts, I'll be running only one host at a time. The same way, if I'm going to give the value for this fork as 5, I'll be running 5 hosts at a time. Once it is completed, I'll be running the next 5 hosts. So based on your fork value, you will be running it. It's always better you have less number of forks, because whatever process you are initiating, if you have more number of hosts, then that would take a lot of your compute. So it is always better you have somewhere less than 10 or something like that. So all that depends on this fork value.
Okay, thank you, Venkat.
Yes, and even you can pass this fork value when you are executing the playbook. You just need to type -fork and then your value. So that if you don't want to change the common configurations in the server, only for your playbook you want to do something, then you can take that and run it as -fork. You can specify the value on how many nodes you want to connect at the time. So this playbook has been run successfully. So sorry, is that clear on how to run it on parallel machines?
Yes, got it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So here I have executed the playbook remove.yaml. So let's check if the nginx exists. So nginx is dead and it is not loaded. So which means my playbook, whatever I have removed, whatever I have written has successfully executed, and it has uninstalled the nginx server. So next thing what we will be seeing is how to add an input variable. So for example, I can use a single playbook to install multiple things. Okay, so how can I actually pass an input variable for that? For that, I would be specifying an input variable in a YAML with this format. It is two open flower braces and then package. So package is the input name or the key value pair I would be passing on. Just remember this word package, or else the package. Just remember this word package. So this is how we specify the input: two flower braces and then package, and then we need to close the flower braces. So now when I'm going to execute the same thing, so it will fail. Why it is failing? Because there is no any input variable that is given, and it is failing. It is telling it is failing here. Why it is failing? Because whenever you specify any input, right, with the flower braces, you need to have a space here. That is the reason it is failing, and you haven't passed any parameter for that as well. These are the two reasons why it is failing. So hope you remember, right? How hope you get it right, how to specify input variable, flower braces, space, your input variable name, space, and then you need to close it. So now again I try to run it. Again it is telling the same error. Why it is telling the same error? Because I am not passing any input variable as part of this. So how do I need to pass it? You need to have something called -e, and then you need to pass it in the JSON format. Package nginx. And again it's failing here. Why? Whatever playbook you are calling, right, and whatever input variables you pass, that should be before the playbook name. So let me. So this is how you need to call a playbook. So here I have given install.yaml here, and I have specified -e and package.nginx. So what the Ansible playbook module or Ansible understands is I need to call a playbook called package nginx, which doesn't exist. So whatever playbook you are going to call, that should be in the last of that line. So it is not.
Maybe you need to change that inside that install YAML file.
Yeah, my bad. So since I'm passing it as a string here, I'll be specifying this as well. So whenever you are specifying an input variable, not necessarily at all point you need to do this. Whereas when you are specifying it as part of module or something, then you need to have this braces as well, the double quotes, and on the double quotes, you need to specify the value. Yeah, my category is gone. So, so first thing I need to do is, for me to run the playbook, I need to create an inventory file. So I'm creating here test.ini. In the inventory file, I'll be specifying the group. In the group, I will be giving the host name, so which is local host. So I have made it simple here. It's only one group and I have only one host here. Next thing, I'll be going and writing the playbook here. Install YAML. So I'll be copying the playbook here and I will be passing this as a variable.
You said
Ansible.
to give some space.
Yeah, so I was just about to explain that. So that's the reason. So I've done few changes here. So the first one is I haven't given the parenthesis here in the name, right? So in the name module, I haven't given it here. And yes, I have missed out on space. So all the space and other things plays an important, thing when it comes to Ansible. Thanks for reminding me that. So what I need to do is first I need to run this Ansible -playbook. Then I don't have a default inventory specified here. So how I'll be doing is I'll be specifying the inventory. What my inventory is -i. -i stands for inventory, test.ini, and then my playbook. So it is failing. Why it is failing? Package is undefined. So when you look at the playbook, you can see the package here. I haven't given the double quotes, and here in the service I have given double quotes here. The reason why is this module only understands input on this format. That is the reason you always need to be sure. You always need to be sure on what module you are using and how to pass an input to that module and other things. You need to be sure on that. For that, you need to understand the module complete functionality. Only then you will be able to write a playbook in a larger scale. So how I can pass the variable here? Need to come before this -e package So here again it is telling the playbook is not found, but whatever playbook I have given, that is the correct one, correct? So if I'm able to run like this, it is telling package is undefined, whereas when I am trying to run this, it is telling the Nginx playbook is not found. The reason is, you can see here, right? It is checking for Nginx and the other one. So what I need to do is I need to go this and specify it in. So we're able to see, right? So once I specify this single colon, so see, you can see that my input has been taken as Nginx, correct? So let's check if the Nginx service is installed. Yes, my Nginx is installed. So I can use the same playbook to install maybe a HTTPD or an Apache server as well. So it is failing. So this is how, when a module is not executed properly, you will get a message called, something like this. What it is localhost failed and you will have the complete output here. So whatever output you are getting, that would be in JSON. So for that we need to go here. So we can go JSON beautifier, click on something. So this is what the error has actually come. So for you to read what the error is, HTTPD. So there is no package called HTTPD that is available here. So let me go back to that and try to manually installing HTTPD. You see this command is executed and you see the output here, right? So let's go back, and now the output whatever you have got while running the command is the output what you have got here as error. So you're understanding, right, how the error comes. Whatever you do manually, whatever error comes in, that's what you get it when your playbook fails as well. So let's try to install some other package. So HTTPD is not available, so you need to enable the repo and other things. So let's make it simple.
Maybe you try SNMP.
Yeah, so I have Apache 2. Yeah, I just need a random package. So yes, so just checking. So I have something called Apache 2, which is installed by default, right? So what I can do is, I have a package here, but still it is failing. Why it is failing? The reason is Apache 2 is not a service. Okay, so Apache 2 is not just a CLI tool you are installing. So whenever I try to run the install Apache 2, it was just telling me Apache 2.doc, and other things. So this is just an installation command line tool that is available. Whereas in our playbook, we are checking the service as well. So when a service will be only available for the processes, right? You will not have service available for anything other than process. For example, if you have a command line interface, or if you have kubectl, or if you have IP tables, is just a command. So you'll not have any process running for this, correct? So that's the reason the playbook is failing. So the point why I brought it here is whenever you run anything or whenever you install anything, you need to make sure the playbook is completely validated. There will be few scenarios where your playbook will work, and let me tell you that as well. So there will be few scenarios where there will be service, there will be delay in starting your service. So in those scenarios, your playbook will not check the modules here. So the reason why it is currently failing is it is checking the apt module and it is checking the service module. Whatever I have package I have mentioned, that doesn't belong to the module called service. So that is the reason it is failing here. Whereas when you have issues like the Nginx is taking too long time for you to start and other things, in those scenarios, yes, you will not have any validation error. Your playbook will run seamlessly, and you will have timeout error when you are checking this part of the module. So any Doubts still here?
No.
Perfect. So this is all about a simple playbook. Maybe like I tell you, you have even Katakoda is something where you can learn almost all your DevOps tool, and it is free as well. So you don't need to pay anything. You have the hands-on lab and other things. Just go here. You have your labs. You have the configuring Ubuntu with Ansible. You have Ansible bootstrapping, and if you are SME or expert in something, you feel me training in this way can make people do coding better or Ansible thing better. Then you can create your own content as well. You can give scenarios. You can give everything, and that would be exposed to the community. You can be an open source developer for this as well. So Katakoda will give you an interface, whatever commands you specify. Based on that, people would be learning that. So let's start with here. So you have it here, right? See, as I mentioned, apt name python pip state install. So you will have all the scenarios here. Maybe I'll just paste this as well. So this will be easy for you to understand Ansible, and these whatever terminals we are getting, right? So that is not something specific to whatever input it is given. So if you want to do some more test or something, you are good to go forward and do the testing. And next one is modules. So where can you go and find the modules? So for you to know the modules, you can just type Ansible modules in your, this is the Ansible module index. So this is something like a first page in the book where you have all the modules. So first thing, so for example, I want something which is related to AWS, then I can go to cloud modules. So in AWS, I need something specific to Azure. Just Control F, AZURE. You have all the Azure modules here. So based on whatever service you are using, you can use these modules and you can write your own playbook. So you are new to this Azure module or you are new to this AWS module. So what you can do is you can just click on the module. You will have the complete data here. So you can see here, right? Add user is a string. So in the previous one, when I didn't give that double quotes, it wasn't asking me or telling me any error. Whereas in the next module, when I was not using double quotes, it was telling me the error. The reason is it is by default specified as a string value. So whenever I am calling this particular module and whenever I'll be passing this AD user, I should be passing it in double quotes because it is a string. So this is how you can understand. You have Boolean values. No, you have all the input variables you can pass. Same way, let's not confuse here. So let's go to some apt module where we used, right? So these are all the input variable variables you can give. For example, name is the package name which we gave actually, and then state. So these are the two inputs we passed with this module. The state is latest, absent, present. Latest will install, absent will remove. Based on that, you have two more options. You can try this doing as well. And if you want to upgrade from an existing package, yes, you are good to do that as well. You can upgrade, and there are few patches, few packages which stores value in the cache. You can do that as well. So these are the inputs you can pass with the module called apt. So any doubts still here or any doubts on today's session?